Engagement at Enactus, Sussex, and I'm joined today by Patrick McGrellis from Enterprise Rent-A-Car and also our business coach and mentor at Enactus, Sussex. Today we've been tasked with creating an employability session for you all. So without further ado, I'll pass on to Patrick to introduce himself.
Thank you very much, Ella. Much appreciated for the opportunity to join you today and to talk a little bit about some of the employability skills you may need in applying for roles in general, but more specifically for this call, I'll be talking from my own experience and telling you a little bit about the roles of graduate management trainee that we have available at Enterprise Rent-A-Car. A little bit about me to start with. So I joined the company back in 2016. I've been with Enterprise for a little under 8 years at the moment, but I graduated in the University of Nottingham studying German language. So I had no business related degree whatsoever. I started really as a graduate management trainee at that entry level, learning my role, what needed to be done, worked my way up over the course of 2 years to branch manager, stayed in that role for 3 more years, and then transferred into talent development, where I am now. My role is very specifically about looking at the ongoing learning and development of our almost 900 employees at the European head office alone. And I really enjoy my role and what I do. I think I'm really well positioned to provide you all with a few tips and tricks for how to overcome that initial interview stage, some of the skills that interviewers are looking for, and how to present yourself well at a telephone and a phone interview, in-person interview as well. So looking forward to talking you through some of the best practices today.
Thank you so much, Patrick. So we're going to start off with our first question. I know a lot of us are currently applying for graduate and summer internships and job positions for after university. So what would you say employers look for in terms of skills when applying?
Brilliant question. I'll caveat the answer to this by saying that every employer looks for something slightly different. I'll approach it from 2 aspects. One, using the example of our graduate management trainee role at Enterprise and the skills that are looked for there, but also some general tips and tricks around the skills that I think all interviewers look for, because these are the traits that aren't necessarily coachable or trainable, and they're inherent characteristics that we look for in our applicants to ensure long-term success in those roles. So starting with our graduate management trainee role, we very much specifically look for 5 core competencies. Competencies are the job skills that you require to be successful on day 1 of that job role. But remember, we're not looking for the finished article. Our graduate management trainee roles are, in essence, entry-level positions. So none of this, hey, we want you to have years of experience in these fields. We're truly looking for some basic understanding around these core competencies that will prove to us that you're going to be successful in this role. The first one we look for is customer service. So what goes into exceptional customer service for you? When you're asked this question, think back to the times that you've been a customer, whether it's at a restaurant or a bar, at a hotel, or using an airline. Any other example around what customer service has gone above and beyond in your expectations? A lot of our customer service questions are very specifically about understanding your customer, knowing their needs, understanding the offerings that you have for that customer and presenting to them a number of options. Really truly understanding the position your customer is in and allowing them to have the best experience possible. The second skill we look for is a little bit of an understanding around sales and around competitiveness. So our sales expectations are that we have some products that you can sell additional to the rental car that a customer may take, that may reduce their responsibility in terms of damage caused to the vehicle and how much they would have to pay. Or maybe they're optional extras like a sat nav or a car seat. Good sales skills require you to understand your products that are available, but more specifically understand how those products are going to benefit the exact customer that you're speaking to. Different customers have different needs. Different products will be suitable to different customers. And as leaders and experts in those sales fields, it's your job to understand those options and present the best options available to your customer. That competitive nature is because your sales will be ranked against your colleagues, and we do have systems to really show the best salespeople in our business as well. We're also looking for a little bit of work ethic and flexibility, understanding that our rental branches are open typically between either 8 and 5:30 or 8 and 6. Some of our branches operate 6 and 7 days a week. So knowing that you'll be put onto shift work where you will only ever work your maximum contracted hours, but also with that opportunity to work overtime as well, where in our branch locations, as customer demand increases, we're expected to stay there until the job is done. You'll be rewarded financially for that overtime, but that flexibility and that work ethic is something that we're looking for too. We're also really interested in your leadership skills. When have you been a leader in the past? Maybe you were captain of a football team. Perhaps you've taken an opportunity to lead a project in university or in something extracurricular. Maybe one time you were going on holiday and you had to lead the group through a particular expedition you were going on. That leadership quality is something we would look to nurture and cultivate, but showing us that you know what makes a good leader is an intrinsic part of being successful in that role. And finally, communication. Communication is a skill you'll be using every single day, whether you're communicating with your colleagues, communicating with your customers, or generally communicating with each other to ensure that business flows well, that your customers understand exactly what will happen during that rental process, and that your colleagues know where you're at in terms of your needs and your skill set to allow you to be successful in that role. So for those 5 core competencies, we'll be looking for you to evidence how you understand what those competencies are, and perhaps even when you've evidenced them in the past. Don't be afraid to use small examples. I, for example, talked about the customer service and sales I delivered when I worked part-time in a little cafe, understanding customer needs, knowing how I could produce the food at the right time and serve that to the customers with a smile on my face and giving personable service. Those were all evidences that we used to show I'd be successful as a graduate trainee. On top of these core competencies, my tips for you are to exhibit some skills that I don't think can be trained. These are traits that we look for within our applicants to understand they're the real deal. These people have these skills that we can't necessarily cultivate, but we would celebrate. The first of which I would say is flexibility. Remember, we have very different working hours, depends on the needs of our customers. Our branch are open between fixed times, but being able to be flexible and to attend those sessions and attend those working hours are very, very important. We also talk a bit about resilience. Things won't always go your way. Plans will change. You'll be faced with hardship and difficulty in any working role. How you approach that challenge and how you work through it, perhaps reflecting afterwards to see the growth that you've experienced, is an intrinsic part of resilience and something that we think is really important in our candidates. And finally, and most importantly, I believe, is a willingness to learn. We will train you on all the core skills that you need to be successful, but understanding you won't be naturally talented at them on day one and showing that you always have something to learn. Whether we've been in the business for a day or for 25 years, our people are always learning something new every day. And it's that willingness to learn that can really distinguish you from other candidates too. So it's a lot to think about. Remember, enterprise is very different to many other companies. We provide a very neutral and open ground. We place a very heavy emphasis on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And our social mobility efforts mean that it doesn't matter what type of degree you have. We would hire people into our roles based on how well you line up against those competencies and those traits that I just discussed. On top of that, in order to apply for a graduate management trainee role, we do require a full UK or EU driving license, but we do make adjustments for those individuals who may not drive due to a disability, and our offering is always expanding throughout time as well. So hopefully that helps in terms of some of the skills employers look for. And remember, it's very specific to the job that you're applying for. But in that example, I used our graduate management trainee role, which was a great experience for me, who I didn't know what I wanted to do after I studied German language. And I came in, I learned how to run a business. I was trained on all these core skills, and I was built up into an environment where I could figure out what I was interested in, what I was good at. And now I specialize in something that's perfectly suited to me, and I'm very fortunate to be in this position. So hopefully that helps in terms of some of the job skills that employers require.
Great, thank you so much. And it's so great to know there's such a range of skills you look for, and they don't necessarily all come from previous work experience and things, and also from just doing bar work and things, but also just skills that you might naturally have. So, on to the second question. How do you think you should present yourself during a phone or in-person interview if you're lucky to get one?
Great question. Well, phone interviews and in-person interviews are two very different experiences. Starting with the phone interview, you have to remember that this is a screening process. The phone interview is typically the first stage after they've looked at your customized CV and they get a bit of an understanding through your letter of interest that you would like to take on the role. But it's really used to separate those individuals who are applying for the job just because it's a job and they just want something, as opposed to those individuals who have done their research, who understand the company, understand the job role, and have a real interest in the job that they're applying for, not just to cover some time in 3 or 4 months, but to really apply for a career for life. So, as you're answering the questions, remember to show your interest, remember to show your passion. Remember, they can't see you. So when you smile and talk on the phone, as cheesy as it might sound, your voice actually comes through a lot clearer and a lot more positively. So remember, smiling when you're talking can really help. Also remember to not be disturbed. Put yourself in an environment or background where there is little to no background noise, where you can fully focus on the questions being asked. But again, if you miss something that interviewer asks, ask them to repeat it. You have an opportunity to have a fluid conversation with your interviewer, and using that opportunity to be personable. Hi, how are you? Thank you for the opportunity. Really looking forward to getting to start this interview. And using the interviewer's name are all tips that might help you form a connection with the person interviewing you and show your authenticity. At the end of the phone interview, if you haven't been told already, ask what the next steps might be. If you can show your real passion and interest in the company and in the job role, you're in a position to be successful in that phone interview. Then comes the in-person interview. Now, it may be face-to-face, it may be over Teams camera, different companies have different setups, but this is your chance to show you have the competencies that your interviewer is looking for. Start with a nice opening. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. Very much excited to get started. I really want to make sure everything that I say is clear. So if I am too quick or I don't quite give you the full answer you're looking for, please feel free to ask some more questions because I'm sure I've got the knowledge to expand on it. And as your interviewer goes through, they'll typically ask you those competency-based questions. Tell me about a time when you showed great leadership. Tell me about a time when you delivered exceptional customer service. Tell me about a time where you communicated clearly to great effect. And it's here where you can use our STAR method. The STAR method is an industry-wide standard that we would recommend candidates use to be able to fully tell the story and answer the question an interviewer may pose to you. STAR is situation. So tell me about the context in which you used your exceptional leadership skills. Why were you there? What really was the situation? Task. What did you have to do that made you use your leadership skills? What was the challenge set out in front of you? Action. What did you do? What did you do to develop and exhibit those leadership skills that led to a great outcome? And result, what was that outcome? How did it impact the people involved, your customers, your colleagues, your family, your friends, in whatever example you're given? Situation, task, action, and result is a nice formula for you to use that allows you to fully answer the question that an interviewer may put to you and really gives you the confidence that you know your stuff. That confidence comes through in the interview and your interviewer will pick up on it. As the questions go through, be ready for those strength-based questions. Tell me about a time you felt really excited recently or you did something you were proud of. Tell me about a time when you struggled recently and you failed to achieve what you set out to. It's here those untrainable concepts are looked for, that resilience, that work ethic, that willingness to learn, where you'll be tested on those because those can really augment your ability to perform well in the interview. And as the interview comes to a close, your interviewer will ask you if you have any questions. Please be prepared to ask them questions. Hey, what's your work culture like? What do you do for diversity, equity, and inclusion? Why do you really enjoy working at that company? You aren't expected to know everything before you go into the interview, and that willingness to learn comes through really clearly when you start to ask your interviewer those specific questions. If you're looking for a great closing question, some people will tell you ask the hard sell questions. Can I get the job? When can I start? Those can all be dismissed very easily by your interviewer, as they're probably interviewing many candidates and they need to give everybody the feedback before they can give you the successful notification. So instead of using those hard sell questions, ask them something like, if I was successful in this interview, how would you know in 6 months' time that you made the right decision? This is a great question because it places you in the interviewer's mind as a successful candidate. And now they work backwards and they tell you the expectations that will be placed on you in those first 6 months. And that gives you an opportunity to line up your previous interview responses with those expectations and dispel any concerns that your interviewer may well have. It's a really strong finishing question. Again, if I was successful in this job role, in 6 months' time, how would you know you made the right decision? Really set you apart from other candidates too. Other than that, make sure you enjoy yourself. We hire people. We don't just hire individuals who can fulfill a job function. We want to know about you, your interest, your passion, and your personality. So often we get bogged down in the stressful nature of an interview. We forget to show ourselves. Do that and you really set yourself apart in an interview. Hopefully that gives you some tips and tricks around the phone interview and the in-person interview. And I think we've got some more tips and tricks to share with you shortly.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think that STAR method as well is particularly helpful. I found it helpful with structuring my own thoughts and making sure that I'm succinct to my answers as well. So definitely recommend it. And finally, yeah, what are some general tips and tricks that you can share with us?
Brilliant. I mentioned a few already, but I think they bear repeating. When you apply for that job role to start with, read the application thoroughly. If there are any points you don't understand or that you're concerned about, contact the person below. There will always be someone in that job advert who you can speak to find out some more information. That first point of contact doesn't need to be, I'm interested, can you hire me? It can be, hey, I'm just inquiring about the position. That can really show a willingness to learn and some clarity around that particular topic. What you could also do is really dig into the requirements for those roles. If you don't feel like you have all the requirements, that might be all right. Jump in. If you feel like you're particularly strong in a couple of areas that interviewer is looking for, be prepared to be asked in those gaps why those gaps exist and what you're planning to do to fix them, but don't be put off. You don't have to be an 8 out of 8 competency person to be successful in that job role. You just have to show you've got some strengths, you've got some areas of opportunity, but this is what you're willing to do to improve upon it. When you send your CV and your letter of interest, please make sure it's customized to the company and job role that you're hiring for. Otherwise, it will be really boring to read and may well miss the mark. When you get to that interview stage, remember to breathe, take a glass of water. I like listening to classical music before my interviews. I've got every job interview I've gone for, and I've always listened to classical music. So if you want to draw some correlation there, you're welcome to. But anything that you can do to relax yourself is very important. And then at the end of the job interview, as we've mentioned, have some questions. Make sure you engage with that interviewer in a personal way. Really leave your mark. You have only that set interview time to show that interviewer that you are the right candidate for the role. And it doesn't matter who else is applying for that job role. If you can show up and bring your best, you're going to get some benefit. That's the mindset that I would recommend you go into interviews with. It's a win-win. Either you win, you get the job role, congratulations, or you're unsuccessful in getting that job role. But the feedback that you should strive to receive from that person will shape you the next time. If they don't give you any feedback, ask them for it. Dig in. Ask them the question, what was I short on? How can I improve for next time and be a better candidate in the future? That's a really important method at the end of your interview to show that despite all your previous failures, and we all fail at many stages in our career, the real distinguishing aspect of how we stand back up and hit the next challenge in the future. It can be really daunting applying for a job. It's always daunting in every aspect, whether you've had a 20-year career or whether you're just starting out. But remember, seeking support and help can be really important. And if you follow these tips and tricks, you're going to have some success.
Great, thank you so much. I might have to start trialing that classical music tip myself and see if I find any benefit. Well, I think that's everything for now. Thank you so much, Patrick, for taking the time to be here, and everyone else for listening. I know that you've offered, if anyone has any queries, Patrick's email is in the top right-hand corner. And also another tip, if you are a registered Enactus student, you're able to skip the phone interview stage and fast track your career through sending a letter of interest to gethired@em.com. So yeah, I really recommend everyone to do that. Patrick, thank you so much for being here today.
You're very welcome. And as Ella has said, please, any questions, any queries around the topic of employability, whether it's for enterprise rent-a-car or not, I'm always here to help through Enactus. So do not hesitate to reach out. Thank you, everybody, and we'll speak to you all soon. Bye for now.